The office door slammed open. With nothing but a thin piece of paper and cold signatures, 17 years of my career evaporated in seconds. 72 hours before $89,000 would hit my account. The CEO thought he'd just crushed my future. He didn't know that after 4 phone calls, his $350 million acquisition would crumble to dust, and the only person who could deliver the killing blow was the woman he'd just thrown away. My name is Claire Donovan, and until 3 minutes ago, I was the chief security engineer at Valiant Systems, 38 years old, 17 years with the company, and now holding a termination letter that still felt warm from the printer. "Effective immediately," Gregory Hale had said, not even bothering to look up from his phone as I stood in his corner office. The Manhattan skyline stretched behind him, 42 floors up, a view that cost more per square foot than most people made in a year. "HR will escort you out. Your badge has been deactivated." I didn't sit down. I didn't argue. I simply stood there, watching him scroll through what looked like yacht listings on his screen. Gregory Hale, our illustrious CEO for the past 18 months, a man who couldn't write a line of code if his life depended on it, but somehow convinced the board he was a visionary leader. "The timing is interesting," I said, keeping my voice neutral. 72 hours before quarterly bonuses. Finally he looked up, and there it was, that smirk, the one he wore in board meetings when he took credit for my team's work. "Budget constraints. Claire, you understand. The company needs to be lean for the acquisition. $89,000. That was my bonus amount. Already approved. Already budgeted. Sitting in the system waiting for Friday's automated transfer. But it wasn't about the money. It never was. What Gregory didn't know, what he'd never bothered to learn in his year and a half of playing CEO, was that my bonus wasn't just compensation. It was tied to something much more valuable. The intellectual property rights to the encryption framework I'd built from scratch. The same framework that made Valiant Systems worth acquiring in the first place. I watched him return to his phone, dismissing me like I was an intern who'd brought him the wrong coffee order. The mahogany desk between us held a single folder, my personnel file, no doubt, and a crystal paperweight shaped like a bull. How fitting. "I'll need you to sign the separation agreement," he said, sliding a document across the desk without looking up. "Standard stuff, non-disclosure, non-compete, the usual." I picked up the pen, his Mont Blanc, naturally, and signed without reading. He probably took that as submission. Defeat. Let him. Gregory Hale, with his MBA from Wharton and his father's connections, had never bothered to read the original employment contract Samuel Wright had drafted for me 17 years ago. Samuel, our founder, our true visionary, who'd died 2 years ago and left this company in the hands of vultures. The security guard appeared at the door, Marcus, who I'd worked with for a decade, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Ms. Donovan?" he said apologetically. "It's fine, Marcus," I said, setting down the pen with deliberate care. "I know the way out." As I turned to leave, Gregory called out, "Oh, and Claire, the acquisition closes Monday. Just thought you should know your little security protocols. That encryption thing you're so proud of, the buyers have their own team. We never really needed you." I stopped at the door but didn't turn around. "Interesting theory," I said. "I suppose we'll see." The elevator ride down was silent except for Marcus's uncomfortable breathing. 42 floors of descent, each one representing another year of nights I'd spent debugging code, another crisis I'd solved, another system I'd built that kept this company alive. By the time we reached the lobby, I'd already run through the timeline in my head. 72 hours until the bonus deadline, 96 hours until the acquisition closing, 4 business days for certain clauses to trigger, and one very specific paragraph in Section 17 of the original IP agreement that Gregory Hale had never read. Outside, Manhattan's November air bit through my blazer. I pulled out my phone, my personal one, since the company phone was already dead, and checked the time. 2:43 p.m. on a Tuesday, by my calculation. Gregory Hale had just made a $350 million mistake. He thought he was saving $89,000. He thought he was showing me who had the power. He thought 17 years of dedication could be erased with a signature and a security escort. But Samuel Wright had been paranoid about protecting his engineers. The old man had insisted on that clause. hidden in the dense legalese that no one ever reads. If the company terminated a key engineer without cause and failed to pay contracted bonuses, all intellectual property rights developed by that engineer would revert to them personally within 96 hours. I walked toward the subway, already composing emails in my head, not to send now, that would be too obvious, but to schedule, to time perfectly, to deploy like the precision instruments they were. Gregory Hale thought he'd fired me. In reality, he'd just started the countdown to his own destruction. Gregory Hale was everything wrong with corporate America wrapped in a $3,000 suit. I'd researched him thoroughly over the past 18 months, the way you study a virus to understand how it spreads. Born into money, his father owned a chain of luxury car dealerships across Connecticut. Harvard undergraduate, paid his way through, Wharton MBA. Same story. His first 3 CEO positions had all ended the same way: initial stock bump from cost-cutting and layoffs, followed by declining innovation, brain drain, and eventual board removal. But each failure was cushioned by golden parachutes and family connections that led to the next opportunity. He'd landed at Valiant through Richard Brennan, a board member who belonged to the same country club. The board had been split after Samuel's death. Half wanted to promote internally, half wanted fresh blood. Gregory had dazzled them with PowerPoints about synergistic disruption and leveraging human capital, empty words that meant nothing but sounded expensive. His first month, he'd called an all-hands meeting at 7:30 a.m. on a Monday. Half the engineering team couldn't make it. They'd been up until 4 a.m. fixing a critical bug. Gregory had used their absence to talk about commitment issues in the company culture. "We need players who show up," he'd said, looking directly at the empty chairs. "Excellence isn't just about technical skills. It's about presence, visibility, being part of the team." I'd stood up then, something I rarely did in meetings. "Those empty chairs represent the engineers who saved us from a $40 million breach last night. They're home sleeping because they chose the company's survival over your meeting." The room had gone silent. Gregory's face had flushed, but he'd recovered quickly, that practiced smile sliding back into place. "Of course, Claire, we value all contributions, but perhaps next time we can plan better." That was the moment he'd marked me as a problem. Over the following months, I'd watched him systematically dismantle everything Samuel had built. The open-door policy became scheduled office hours. The flexible work-from-home arrangements were replaced with core hours requirements. The generous professional development budget was slashed by 80%. But his biggest sin was how he treated the technology. To Gregory, our encryption framework was just a product to sell, not a living system that needed constant refinement. He'd refused my last 3 budget requests for security updates, saying Phoenix Digital could handle that after the acquisition. "We don't need to gold-plate it, Claire," he'd said in our last executive meeting. "It works. That's enough." I tried to explain that in cybersecurity, it works is a moving target. Threats evolve daily. A system that's secure today is vulnerable tomorrow without constant adaptation. But Gregory heard only what he wanted to hear, that the product was ready to sell. The acquisition had been his idea from day one. He'd brought in Phoenix Digital, pitched them aggressively, promised them exclusive rights to technology he didn't understand. The $350 million price tag was actually below market value. Any competent negotiator could have gotten $400 million or more. But Gregory wanted a quick win, something to cement his position before the board started asking hard questions about declining morale and the exodus of senior engineers. 7 people from my original team had already left. Each time, Gregory spun it as clearing out deadwood or making room for fresh talent. The fresh talent never materialized, just contractors and offshore teams that cost less and delivered nothing. He'd even tried to outsource parts of the encryption framework maintenance to a firm in Eastern Europe. I'd had to threaten to quit to stop that disaster. The irony of outsourcing security to the lowest bidder was completely lost on him. But what truly revealed Gregory's character was how he handled Samuel's legacy initiatives. The internship program with local universities canceled. The annual hackathon that brought in fresh ideas, deemed too expensive. The profit-sharing program that Samuel had insisted on restructured into performance bonuses that somehow only executives qualified for. I'd kept a file on every decision, every meeting where he'd overruled technical recommendations for financial ones, not for legal purposes, just to remind myself that this was temporary, that companies like Valiant either shed parasites like Gregory or died from them. His office routine was predictable. Arrive at 9:15 a.m. sharp in his Bentley. Yes, a Bentley to drive 12 blocks. Leave at 4:30 p.m. for drinks at the University Club. Fridays were golf with potential investors. He spent more time managing his image than managing the company. The saddest part was that he genuinely believed he was good at this. Every quarterly report that showed reduced expenses, he'd crow about operational efficiency. Never mind that our best engineers were fleeing, that innovation had ground to a halt, that we were coasting on work I'd done 2 years ago. He'd actually said in a CNBC interview last month, Valiant Systems was a good company that needed professional management to become great. We're trimming fat, focusing on core competencies, and positioning ourselves for explosive growth. Trimming fat, I was fat to be trimmed. But Gregory had made one crucial error, the kind that only happens when you believe you're the smartest person in every room. He'd never actually read the contracts he'd inherited. He'd assumed that standard corporate agreements were all the same, that lawyers handled the details, that his MBA made him immune to fine print. In 96 hours, he'd learn otherwise. Phoenix Digital would discover they were buying a company that no longer owned its core technology. The SEC would start asking about material disclosures. The board would realize their CEO had just destroyed the company's value through sheer arrogance and negligence. And Gregory Hale would finally understand that the fat he'd trimmed was actually the heart of the company. But by then, it would be too late. I closed my laptop and left the coffee shop. Time to go home and wait. The best revenge isn't served cold, it's served precisely on schedule, with proper documentation. My apartment in Brooklyn Heights had always been my sanctuary, a place where Valiant Systems couldn't reach me. Now it would become my war room. I didn't storm out of the building. I didn't send angry emails. I didn't even update my LinkedIn status. I simply went home and began preparing for what Samuel would have called the elegant solution. The first step was documentation. I pulled up the original employment agreement from 17 years ago, the one Samuel had insisted his personal lawyer draft. Section 17, subsection 4, paragraph 2. I'd read it so many times I could recite it from memory, but I needed to see it again. In the event of termination without cause and failure to disburse contractually obligated bonuses within 72 hours of termination date, all intellectual property rights for systems developed by the employee shall automatically revert to said employee, effective 96 hours from termination timestamp. Timestamp. Samuel had been specific about that word, not date timestamp. My termination was logged at 2:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tuesday. That gave Gregory until 2:40 p.m. Friday to pay the bonus. When he didn't, and he wouldn't, the 96-hour clock would start. I opened my secure server and began setting up the automated sequences. Nothing illegal. Nothing that could be traced back as sabotage. Just perfectly timed information releases that would let the truth speak for itself. Email 1. Scheduled for 8 a.m. Monday morning. To Phoenix Digital's Chief Legal Counsel, Jennifer Walsh. I'd met her once at a conference sharp, thorough, the type who actually read contracts. The subject line, urgent IP rights clarification required before closing. The body would contain a simple question about Section 17 and whether Phoenix's due diligence team had reviewed the employment agreements of key engineers. Email 2, scheduled for 8:30 a.m. Monday. To the SEC's Merger Division. Not a complaint that would be too aggressive. Just a query about proper disclosure requirements when core intellectual property ownership was in transition. Bureaucratic language that would trigger an automatic review. Email 3. Scheduled for 9 a.m. Monday. To Rebecca Torres at the Wall Street Journal. She'd been investigating Gregory's previous CEO positions, had even called me 2 months ago for background. I'd declined then. This email would simply say, regarding our previous conversation about patterns in executive decision-making, you might want to examine the timeline of events at Valiant Systems between November 12th to 16th. Email 4 would go to Maxwell Sterling at 9:15 a.m. Monday. Maxwell had opposed Gregory's appointment, had seen through the PowerPoint polish. The email would be just 3 sentences. The acquisition will fail by noon. Section 17 is now active. Samuel's paranoia was justified. But emails were just the opening move. The real preparation was in the code itself. Every piece of the encryption framework I developed contained my digital signature, not just comments or metadata that could be stripped out, but embedded in the mathematical structure itself. It was like a painter's brushstroke, unique and undeniable. I also prepared a demonstration environment on my personal servers, ready to prove that I could independently recreate every function of the Valiant Systems security framework. From memory, 17 years of work had burned those algorithms into my brain. Gregory thought the company owned that knowledge. He was about to learn the difference between owning code and owning the mind that created it. The phone rang. David Martinez again. I let it go to voicemail. Claire, the team is in chaos. Gregory just announced that Phoenix is sending their own security team to evaluate redundancies. We all know what that means. Please, if you have any pull with the board, now would be the time. Poor David. He didn't understand that chaos was exactly what I wanted. A panicked team would make mistakes, reveal problems, create the perfect storm of doubt just as Phoenix was supposed to wire $350 million. I ordered Thai food and settled in for a long night of preparation. Not coding everything technical was already done. This was about timing, precision, letting Gregory's own arrogance be the instrument of his destruction. At 11:47 p.m., I made one call to Samuel's estate lawyer, Margaret Kim. Claire. She sounded surprised. It's late. I was terminated today, without cause. They're withholding my bonus. Silence. Then Section 17. 96 hours from 2:40 p.m. today. Do you need me to? No. I just wanted someone to know. Someone who understood what Samuel built into that contract. He always said you were too valuable to lose but too principled to be bought. He was proud of you, Claire. After we hung up, I stood at my window, looking across the river at Manhattan's lights. Somewhere in that glittering skyline, Gregory Hale was probably at a champagne dinner, celebrating his upcoming triumph. He had no idea that every second that ticked by brought him closer to disaster. I didn't need to hack anything, didn't need to steal or leak or sabotage. All I had to do was wait and let Gregory's decision to fire me become the most expensive mistake of his career. The beauty of Section 17 wasn't just that it protected me, it was that it created a trap that only activated if someone was stupid enough to try to cheat me. My laptop showed 4 scheduled emails, ready to deploy. My server hummed with 17 years of documented code. The countdown timer on my phone showed 67 hours until the bonus deadline. I went to bed at 1:15 a.m., sleeping better than I had in months. Gregory thought he'd eliminated a problem. In 67 hours, he'd discover he'd created a $350 million problem with his signature on it. Thursday morning arrived with the first crack in Gregory's perfect facade. I was having coffee at 7:30 a.m. when my phone buzzed with a Google alert I'd set up for Valiant Systems. TechCrunch had picked up a rumor. Sources say key engineer exit raises questions about Valiant Phoenix deal. The article was vague, clearly based on insider gossip, but it asked the right question. Why would Valiant's chief security engineer leave just days before a major acquisition? The reporter had reached out to both companies for comment. Phoenix declined. Valiant issued a statement about routine restructuring to optimize for post-merger integration. Optimize. Gregory loved that word. By noon, the whispers had gotten louder. I received 3 LinkedIn messages from former colleagues at other companies, all variations of, "Hey Claire, heard you're available. Want to talk?" Word travels fast in tech circles, especially when it doesn't make sense. Then came the first real sign of trouble. At 2:17 p.m. Thursday, 47 hours after my termination, Rebecca Torres from the Wall Street Journal called. "Ms. Donovan, I'm working on a story about the Valiant acquisition. I understand you're no longer with the company." "That's correct." "The timing is unusual. You've been there 17 years. You built their core technology, and you leave right before the biggest payday in company history." "I didn't leave, Ms. Torres. I was terminated." Silence. Then, "Would you be willing to go on record?" "Not yet, but you might want to look into the terms of the acquisition agreement, specifically the representations and warranties about intellectual property ownership." "Are you saying there's an issue with IP ownership?" "I'm saying you should ask Phoenix if they've reviewed all employment contracts for key engineers. Have a good day, Ms. Torres. I hung up. She'd dig now. Reporters like Rebecca didn't let go once they smelled blood in the water. By Thursday evening, someone at Valiant had noticed the storm brewing. David texted me at 6:43 p.m. Gregory just called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. Says it's about addressing market concerns. Claire, what's happening? I didn't respond. Let them wonder. Friday morning came gray and drizzling. Fitting weather for an execution. The bonus deadline was 2:40 p.m., less than 7 hours away. I dressed in my best suit, not because I was going anywhere, but because it felt appropriate, like dressing for a funeral. At 9 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number with a 212 area code. I let it ring. At 9:30 a.m., another call. This time I recognized the number Valiant's main line. At 10:15 a.m., Maxwell Sterling called from his personal cell. I'd been expecting this one, so I answered. Claire, thank God. What the hell is going on? Rebecca Torres just called me asking about IP ownership issues. The Phoenix team is asking questions. Gregory's in full panic mode. Hello, Maxwell. I assume you've reviewed Section 17 of my employment agreement. Section 17, Claire. I don't have time for... Make time. Samuel insisted on that clause for a reason. I was terminated without cause on Tuesday. My bonus payment is due by 2:40 this afternoon. When it doesn't arrive, and we both know it won't, a 96-hour timer starts. After that, all IP rights to the encryption framework revert to me. Silence so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, that can't be legal. Margaret Kim drafted it. Samuel's personal attorney, ironclad and filed with the state. Phoenix is about to buy a company that doesn't own its core technology. Claire, be reasonable. We can work something out. I was reasonable for 17 years. I was reasonable when Gregory cut my team's budget. I was reasonable when he ignored security warnings. I was reasonable right up until he fired me to save $89,000. Now I'm just following contract law. This will destroy the company. No, Maxwell. Gregory destroyed the company. I'm just the consequence. At 11:30 a.m., the panic had clearly set in. 3 board members called. The head of HR called twice. Even Gregory's assistant called, trying to schedule a brief discussion about transition matters. Then, at 12:47 p.m., something interesting happened. Jennifer Walsh from Phoenix Digital called directly. Ms. Donovan, I'm Jennifer Walsh, Chief Legal Counsel for Phoenix Digital. I believe we met at the RSA conference 2 years ago. I remember. You asked very intelligent questions about quantum-resistant encryption. Thank you. I'll be direct. We've been made aware of potential complications regarding intellectual property ownership. Can you confirm whether Section 17 of your employment agreement is currently in effect? I smiled. Jennifer had done her homework. As of 12:47 p.m. Friday, Valiant Systems has 1 hour and 53 minutes to fulfill their contractual obligations. If they fail to do so, yes, Section 17 activates, and you would own the encryption framework. Every line of code, every algorithm, every patent pending. I see. And would you be willing to discuss licensing terms with Phoenix directly? Ms. Walsh, I appreciate your pragmatism, but I think we both know this acquisition is dead. You can't buy technology from a company that doesn't own it, and you can't close a deal with this kind of uncertainty. No, she said quietly. We can't. After she hung up, I made myself a sandwich and watched the clock. 1:30 p.m., 1:45, 2 p.m. At 2:20 p.m., 20 minutes before deadline, Gregory Hale himself called. I stared at his name on my phone screen, let it ring 3 times, then answered. Hello, Gregory. His voice was different, arrogance, no dismissive tone, just naked panic. Claire, we need to talk. Claire, there's been a misunderstanding. Gregory's voice crackled through the phone, stripped of its usual corporate polish. The termination was premature. HR acted without full authorization. HR acted on your direct order. Gregory, I was in your office. You handed me the termination letter yourself. That was... Look, we can reverse this. You can be back at your desk Monday morning. With a raise? 20%. No, 30%. I looked at my laptop screen. 2:22 p.m., 18 minutes until the bonus deadline. It's not about the desk. Gregory, it's about the contract. The bonus fine. I'll authorize it right now. $89,000. Right, I'll have accounting wire it immediately. You have 18 minutes. The contract specifies 2:40 p.m., 72 hours from termination. Christ, Claire, I'm trying to fix this. No, you're trying to save yourself. There's a difference. He paused, and I could hear muffled voices in the background. His lawyers, probably. When he came back, his tone had shifted to something harder. You're making a mistake. If you tank this deal, you'll never work in tech again. I'll make sure of it. Gregory, you never even read Section 17. Did you? What the hell does that matter now? Because if you had, you'd know that the bonus payment has to come from the company's primary operating account, not from a personal wire or emergency fund. It has to be coded as a contractual bonus payment in the system, and that takes a minimum of 2 hours to process through your internal controls. Silence. Then, you knew. You knew I couldn't pay you in time even if I wanted to. I knew you'd wait until the last minute. Your kind always does. The second call came at 2:35 p.m., 5 minutes before deadline. Jennifer Walsh from Phoenix. Ms. Donovan, I need to confirm something. If Valiant fails to meet the bonus deadline, when exactly does the IP transfer occur? 96 hours from the termination timestamp, Tuesday at 2:40 p.m. And there's no way to prevent this transfer. Read Section 17 yourself. It's automatic and irrevocable. Our lawyers have. It's admirably constructed. Samuel Wright was paranoid about protecting his engineers. Turns out he was right. Ms. Donovan, hypothetically, if Phoenix were to walk away from the Valiant acquisition, would you be interested in a direct arrangement with us? Ms. Walsh, we both know you're going to walk away. No board would approve this acquisition now. No, she admitted. They wouldn't. 2:40 p.m. came and went. I watched the clock tick over on my phone, feeling nothing but calm satisfaction. Somewhere in Manhattan, Gregory Hale was watching $350 million evaporate. The third call came at 3:15 p.m. Maxwell Sterling, his voice carefully controlled. The bonus deadline has passed. Yes. Phoenix just called an emergency board meeting. They're pulling out. That was predictable. Claire, the board wants to discuss bringing you back. As CEO, Gregory is finished. I laughed, actually laughed. Maxwell, the company is finished. Without the Phoenix deal, you can't make payroll next month. You've been bleeding cash for a year while Gregory played CEO. There's nothing to come back to. We could recover, with you leading. With what technology in 96 hours? I own everything valuable. You'll have an empty shell with a fancy office lease. This is revenge. No, this is consequence. Revenge would be if I did something to Gregory. I'm not doing anything. I'm just letting contracts execute as written. The fourth and final call of the day came at 4:47 p.m. Not to my phone, but through my laptop. A video call request from Phoenix Digital's executive board. I accepted. 5 faces appeared on screen, including Jennifer Walsh and Phoenix's CEO, Robert Huang. Ms. Donovan, Huang began without preamble. We've terminated our acquisition agreement with Valiant Systems. That was wise. Jennifer has explained the situation. In 96 hours, you'll own the technology we wanted to acquire. 92 hours and 13 minutes, but yes. Would you be willing to discuss a licensing arrangement directly with Phoenix? Mr. Huang, I've spent 17 years building something valuable, only to watch it be undervalued and mismanaged. If we talk, it won't be about licensing. It'll be about a partnership where I maintain control of my technology. The board members exchanged glances. Huang nodded slowly. That could be arranged. Would you be willing to meet Tuesday afternoon, say, 3 p.m.? Tuesday at 3 p.m. 20 minutes after the IP rights would transfer to me. They'd done the math. I'll consider it. After the call ended, I opened my email and canceled all 4 scheduled messages to Phoenix, the SEC, the Journal, and Maxwell. They weren't necessary now. The threat alone had been enough. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking Phoenix Digital withdraws from Valiant Systems acquisition, citing material concerns. I turned off my phone, closed my laptop, and poured myself a glass of wine. Outside, Manhattan's lights were beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. Somewhere out there, Gregory Hale was trying to explain to the board how he destroyed the company to save $89,000. The beautiful thing about a properly executed contract is that it doesn't require anger or revenge or even effort. It just requires patience and precision. Samuel Wright had given me both the sword and the shield 17 years ago. I'd just been waiting for someone stupid enough to make me use them. Saturday morning, the financial press exploded. The Wall Street Journal ran Rebecca Torres's story with the headline, "How a Fired Engineer Killed a $350 million Deal." The Financial Times was more direct, "Valiant Systems in freefall after Phoenix walks." TechCrunch went for the jugular, "CEO's $89K mistake costs shareholders everything." I read them all from my couch, coffee in hand, phone on silent. The story was everywhere: the brilliant engineer, the arrogant CEO, the 17-year-old contract clause that nobody read. Reddit was having a field day. Someone had already created a meme, Gregory Hale saving $89K, losing $350 million. By noon, Valiant stock had dropped 63%. Trading was halted twice. The board held 3 emergency meetings in 6 hours, according to David, who was texting me updates I hadn't asked for. "Claire, it's chaos here. Gregory locked himself in his office. Security is here. I think they're escorting him out. The board is meeting again. Maxwell Sterling just walked past looking like death." At 2 p.m., an official statement hit the wires. Valiant Systems announces leadership transition. Gregory Hale steps down. Board evaluating strategic options. Steps down. Corporate speak for fired in disgrace. Then came the calls from reporters, dozens of them, each wanting the inside story, the human angle, the drama. I declined them all except Rebecca Torres, who'd done the work. "Ms. Donovan, can you comment on the situation at Valiant?" "I signed a non-disclosure agreement. Ms. Torres, I can't discuss internal matters." "But the IP transfer, that's public knowledge now." "Contract law is public record. Anyone can read Section 17. "Did you know this would happen when you were terminated?" "I knew that contracts have consequences. Gregory Hale apparently didn't. Sources say he's considering legal action against you." "For what?" "Following a contract his company signed. Good luck with that." She paused. "One source claims you could have warned them, given them a chance to fix it." "I was terminated without cause and escorted from the building by security. They had 72 hours to fix it themselves. They chose not to." Sunday was quieter, but the aftershocks continued. Business schools were already calling it a case study in executive hubris. LinkedIn was flooded with posts about the importance of reading contracts and why you should never underestimate your engineers. Gregory's professional reputation was destroyed. His LinkedIn profile disappeared. His Twitter went private. Someone leaked an internal email he'd sent Thursday night, desperately trying to blame HR, legal, even the board for the termination decision. It only made him look worse. At 4 p.m. Sunday, Margaret Kim called. "Claire, I've been watching the news. Samuel would have been proud." "He saw this coming, didn't he?" "He saw Gregory's type coming. Maybe not the specific person, but the type. He knew that eventually someone would try to push you out to claim credit for your work. That's why he insisted on Section 17. The 96-hour transfer happens Tuesday at 2:40 p.m. I'll have the documentation ready. Once it executes, you'll own everything free and clear." Monday morning brought fresh hell for Valiant. The SEC announced a preliminary investigation into whether the company had properly disclosed material risks to shareholders. 3 law firms announced class action suits on behalf of investors. Employees were jumping ship so fast that their IT department couldn't process the departures. David called at noon. "Claire, I'm putting in my notice. Everyone is. There's nothing left here." "I'm sorry, David. This wasn't about hurting the team." "We know. We all know exactly what this was about. Gregory got what he deserved. Just promise me you'll do something good with the technology. Don't let 17 years of our work just disappear." "I promise." At 3:30 p.m. Monday, an unexpected call came through. Robert Huang from Phoenix Digital. "Ms. Donovan, I wanted to confirm our meeting tomorrow at 3 p.m. We're still meeting. More than ever, my board is very interested in working with someone who understands both technology and contracts. Gregory Hale's incompetence actually did us a favor we would have overpaid for damaged goods. Now we can structure something better. Mr. Huang, to be clear, I won't be selling the technology outright. We understand. We're thinking partnership, not purchase. Phoenix provides the infrastructure and distribution. You maintain control and continue development. 60-40 split on revenues. 70-30. He chuckled. We'll discuss it tomorrow. Tuesday morning, I woke at 6 a.m., made coffee, and watched the sun rise over Brooklyn. Somewhere in the city, Gregory Hale was probably meeting with lawyers, trying to find some way to salvage his career. The Valiant board was probably in another emergency session, trying to find some way to avoid bankruptcy. At 1 p.m., I got dressed in my best suit, the same one I'd worn Friday, but this time for a different kind of funeral. At 2:39 p.m., I sat at my laptop, watching the clock, 10 seconds, 5 seconds. 2:40 p.m. A simple notification appeared on my screen, transfer complete, intellectual property rights, Claire Donovan. No fanfare, no dramatic music, just a quiet transfer of ownership that represented 17 years of my life. Now finally, truly mine. My phone immediately rang. Jennifer Walsh. Ms. Donovan, our systems show the transfer is complete. Yes. We'll see you at 3. I'll be there. I stood up, gathered my things, and headed for the door. Behind me, my laptop displayed one final message I'd programmed to send at exactly 2:41 p.m., addressed to Gregory Hale's personal email. Section 17 executed successfully. Thank you for the opportunity. C. Donovan. Short, professional, and absolutely devastating. The kind of message that would haunt him forever, a reminder that his greed and arrogance had cost him everything, delivered with the same cold efficiency he'd shown when he fired me. The greatest revenge isn't loud or violent or dramatic. Sometimes it's just letting someone's own decisions destroy them. Then sending a polite thank you note for making it possible. The Phoenix Digital headquarters occupied floors 30 through 45 of a glass tower in Midtown. At 2:55 p.m., I walked through their lobby, my heels clicking against marble that cost more than most people's salaries. The security guard checked my name against a list, handed me a visitor badge, and directed me to the executive elevator. Jennifer Walsh met me on the 40th floor. Ms. Donovan, welcome. The board is assembled. The conference room was all glass and chrome, with a view that stretched to Central Park. 5 board members sat around a table that could have seated 20. Robert Huang stood as I entered. Ms. Donovan, thank you for coming. Please, sit. I took the chair across from him, placed my laptop bag beside me, and waited. Let them speak first. Samuel had taught me that silence is a negotiating tool. We've reviewed your technology portfolio, Huang began. It's impressive, more comprehensive than we realized when pursuing Valiant. Valiant only implemented about 60% of what I developed. Gregory considered the rest unnecessary refinements. His loss, we're interested in the full suite, plus future development. Jennifer slid a folder across the table. Our initial proposal, partnership structure, not acquisition, you maintain ownership and control of the core IP. Phoenix provides infrastructure, sales, support, and global distribution. Revenue split 70-30 in your favor for the first 2 years, then renegotiated based on performance. I opened the folder, scanned the summary page. The numbers were bigger than I'd expected. Much bigger. You're offering a $5 million advance against future revenues. Your technology solves problems we've been throwing money at for 3 years. $5 million is cheap if it works as advertised. It works better than advertised. I undersold it to Valiant because Gregory wouldn't understand the advanced features anyway. Board member Thomas Chen spoke up. We've heard about your situation with Valiant. How do we know you won't do the same to us if things go badly? I looked him straight in the eye. Because you're not going to fire me 72 hours before a bonus payment to save money. You're not going to ignore my technical recommendations to cut costs. And you're definitely not going to treat me like overhead to be eliminated. Are you? No, Huang said firmly. We're not Gregory Hale. Then we won't have a problem. The negotiation took 2 hours. They wanted exclusive rights for financial services. I gave them first right of refusal. They wanted me to relocate to their Silicon Valley office. I agreed to 1 week per month on site. They wanted a 5-year commitment. I gave them 3 with an option to extend. By 5:45 p.m., we had a deal. Not just a licensing agreement, a true partnership. I would lead a new security division within Phoenix, hiring my own team, setting my own priorities. The advance would hit my account by Friday. The formal announcement would go out Monday. One condition, I said as we prepared to sign. I want to hire my old team from Valiant, the ones who haven't already found new positions. Done, Huang said. We could use people who understand the technology. As I signed my name on the partnership agreement, I thought about Gregory Hale. He was probably in his Tribeca apartment, scrolling through job listings, trying to figure out how to explain to future employers why he'd destroyed a company to save $89,000. His Bentley would be returned to the dealership soon leased. Of course, like everything in his life. The country club membership would be quietly canceled. The invitations would stop coming. But I also thought about Samuel Wright, who'd seen this moment coming 17 years ago, who'd built a trap so elegant that it only activated if someone tried to abuse his engineers, who'd protected me even after death. Jennifer walked me to the elevator after everything was signed. Can I ask you something off the record? Go ahead. You could have warned Gregory, could have given him a chance to make it right before the deadline. Why didn't you? I stepped into the elevator, held the door for a moment. He had 17 years to read that contract. He had 18 months to treat me with respect. He had 72 hours to do the right thing. How many more chances did he deserve? The doors closed on her thoughtful expression. Outside, Manhattan was beginning its evening transformation. Office workers flooding the sidewalks, taxis hunting for fares, the city shifting from business to pleasure. I stood on the corner of 42nd and Madison, watching it all happen, feeling something I hadn't felt in years free. My phone buzzed, a text from David Martinez. Heard the news about Phoenix. Please tell me you're hiring. I typed back, send me your resume, and tell the others. Then I deleted Gregory Hale's number from my phone. Not blocked, deleted. He was nothing now, not even worth the memory space. I took the subway home, standing room only, pressed between strangers who had no idea that the woman in the expensive suit had just signed a deal worth millions, that she'd destroyed a company with 4 phone calls and a contract clause, that she'd won the kind of victory people dream about but never achieve. Back in my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and stood at the same window where I'd watched the city Friday night. But this time, I wasn't thinking about revenge or contracts or Gregory Hale. I was thinking about tomorrow, about building something new with Phoenix, about hiring my team back, about finally developing those features Gregory had called unnecessary. My laptop chimed with an email. Robert Huang, sent to Phoenix's entire leadership team and CC'd to me. Team, I'm pleased to announce our partnership with Claire Donovan, one of the industry's leading security architects. This partnership represents Phoenix's commitment to excellence and innovation. Claire's technology will revolutionize our security infrastructure and give us a significant competitive advantage. Please join me in welcoming her to the Phoenix family. Family. Samuel had used that word too, back when Valiant meant something. I raised my glass to the window, to the city, to Samuel's memory. Thank you for Section 17, I whispered. The best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building something better from their ashes. Gregory Hale thought he was saving money when he fired me. Instead, he funded my future. The $89,000 he tried to steal became $5 million. The company he tried to sell became worthless. The engineer he tried to discard became his replacement's partner. And all it took was patience, precision, and a contract clause nobody else bothered to read. Gregory Hale lost everything because he couldn't see value in anything but numbers on a spreadsheet. I won everything because Samuel Wright saw value in protecting the people who create. The city lights twinkled below, full of ambition and greed and dreams and schemes. Somewhere out there, another Gregory Hale was probably firing another engineer, thinking they were disposable, replaceable, unnecessary. They would learn, eventually, that the people who build things have longer memories than the people who sell them. And sometimes, just sometimes, we have better lawyers too. Thank you for listening to this story of corporate revenge and justice served cold. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of how one engineer's patience and a 17-year-old contract brought down a greedy CEO, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Claire's position? Let me know in the comments.